Hello, I am Michael.
And I'm Rebecca.
And we are the hosts of Just Us Thinking.
Come and join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays to have a little fun and a good laugh or two.
We talk about all kinds of everyday things, and we like to have a few laughs ourselves.
You can find us on your favorite podcast player at Just Us Thinking, but make sure to drop that G.
Make sure you also hit that subscribe button, and you can follow us on Facebook.
Thank you for listening.
Greetings, witches and beautiful souls. You are listening to the Bell Witch podcast with me, Swailes, the friendly green witch, witching in the 21st century. How you doing? I hope you're all right. This is episode 36, and it is a solitary witch episode where yours truly talks to you directly about something I find interesting in the spiritual realms of witchcraft and paganism. I can't talk about all aspects of witchcraft because some of it just ain't for me, and that's alright. There are plenty of amazing witchcraft people out there doing fascinating podcasts on all kinds of topics that I have no idea about, and that's okay. I can't do it all. Anywho, for this Solitary Witch episode, I was pondering what to cover because the last one was just so good, the Kundalini one, and I'm obsessed with Kundalini still, think about it all the time. And then looking at my numbers, the Folklore of Forget-Me-Nots episode is doing really well, getting good numbers. So I thought I should do a Folklore episode again, and I came to the conclusion of doing the folklore of snakes. Well, like folklore and mythology, as it turns out. After a bit of research for podcasting, I couldn't really find anything much on snaky witchcraft and folklore. There were lots about dragons and Adam and Eve and all that jazz, but I couldn't find anything about snakes as a magical aiding reptile, and also snakes as a magical being and how to use snakes in your witchcraft, and also really awesome snake associated goddesses, gods. I have a big love for snakes. I have had snakes since I was 15. I had two snakes, Morgan and Cleo. They were both king snakes. One was a black Mexican king snake, and he was so beautiful, Morgan. He was so friendly and he was such a babe. And my second one, who I had the same time, was called Cleo, and she was a chocolate and custard king snake. I'd had Morgan not very long at all, and he got ill and he died, unfortunately. Cancer of the kidneys, which is a thing snakes get, who knew? And his kidneys blew up like balloons, bless him, and had to have him put to sleep. Yeah, that was a bad year. 2006 that was. And I've actually got these two snakes tattooed on the top of my feet. There's a year between them because it hurt so much, but that was my first ever tattoo, was Morgan on the top of my right foot, and then lovely little Cleo at the top of my left foot, and she died about 5 years ago now, so she was an old king snake. She must have been 25 years old, proper old lady. I've got snakes right now. I've got Pebbles, who is a ball python, or royal python as they're called, apparently because in the ancient times kings used to walk around with the snake around the necks, royal pythons, because they're just such a chill snake and they love the warmth and they can hear your heartbeat and they trust humans quite a lot. The story goes royalty used to wear a snake on the throne, and that's why they're called a royal python. They're called a ball python because when they get scared, they turn into a little ball. They kind of coil up really tight. But I think royal python is a better name with a better story behind it. Anyway, I was saying, my lovely little Pebbles, she's absolutely beautiful. She's on my stories often. And I've also got my little corn snake, who is a typical corny colour, bright orange, red eyes. She's quite shy. She's quite old as well. And she is called Heidi officially, but people tend to just call her Snakey. And she's so greedy, she'll eat everything. Yeah, snakes have always been around me. I really associate with snakes. I really trust snakes and love snakes. And I think they love me in return, especially Pebbles. She is such a sweet little snakey. She was a rescue snake that I got in 2006. She had a wound on the top of her nose when I got her that I had to bathe. She was really thin, so we thought she was a boy at first, because boys tend to be smaller than girl snakes in royal pythons, but she was just malnourished, so I fattened her up. She grew loads, she ate well, and now she's the best snake ever, and she's just so loving to me, and she comes up to my face and sniffs my face with her little tongue, and yeah, I really love her. Pets in general are amazing for grounding you, because they're earthly beings. They don't have like awareness that we have about like mundane life, and because their spine and chakras are level to the floor, like the horizontal instead of vertical, so their energy moves easily throughout all the chakras. It's very rare you get like a blocked chakra in an animal saw reed. And when you hold your pets, you cuddle your pets, not just snakes, but any pets, they actually help you ground in the moment and like savor the moment and bring you back on a nice little vibration. I just love that about pets. That's why I think it's really important to have some kind of pet that you can cuddle and get close to. Snakes help my spirituality massively, absolutely massively. And so I thought this would make a very good topic for folklore and magical aspects associated with the beautiful reptile that is the snake. The scaly serpentine that hisses and slithers throughout the jungle. A reptile that can't heat itself, that basks in the sunlight and lives in an assortment of places around the world, from hot jungle climates to dry deserts. A snake, a sneck, a nope rope, a danger noodle. There's so many amazing nicknames for the sweet little snake. Let me ask you, listener, how do you feel about snakes? From my own observation as a snake owner, they are very, very Marmite. People absolutely love them or really, really are repulsed by them and don't want them anywhere near them and don't want to think about them or anything. I really do wonder why this is. They get such a negative response and negative associations. And I think a lot of that is to do with society, and they're used in horror films as negative entities. Like in The Craft, I remember when Sarah's nightmares are of snakes taking over her house, and Nancy says something like, the serpentine is a very powerful being and it should be respected. I agree, Nancy, I agree. But even when thinking about Disney's cartoons, all the snakes tend to be bad guys, don't they? Like Kaa in Jungle Book, he is so untrustworthy and always out for himself and trying to hypnotise the little lad all the time. I can't recall his name. Mowgli. He's always trying to hypnotise Mowgli, and the only person who stands up to him is Shere Khan. In that animated Disney old school version anyway. I think he might be more of a good guy in the actual books. And then there's the snake in Disney's Robin Hood, who's also quite slippery and a little bit sort of yellow-bellied, actually. He's quite a weak character, isn't he? And a bit of a dog's body for the king. And even Jafar in Disney's Aladdin, he's got a snake staff and he's just so sneaky and out for himself, turns into a massive snake at the end, being all snake-like, getting defeated by becoming a genie because he's just so greedy and he wants everything all the time. I mean, just in pop culture of today, I was racking my brains trying to think of a nice snake. I did actually locate one in The Princess and the Frog, where the the old medicine woman in the jungle. Mama Odie's pet snake called Juju, which she just wears throughout the whole cartoon, just like a royal python. The snake looks after her, looks out for her. That's probably the first, at least Disney representation of a lovable, friendly snake. So at least there is one there. If you can think of any more, do please let me know, because I would like to hear them. Email me, yeah? You can't really talk about snakes without talking about Adam and Eve in the pleasant Garden of Eden, where a snake convincing Eve to take a bite out of this magical apple on the magical life tree, which led to their immediate downfall as humans in a brand new world made in 7 days. And people suggest that this snake represents the devil doing devilish things to humankind, tricking them into doing stuff they don't want to do, with hidden agendas, being all snaky and sly. Evil within. I mean, I'm not really a fan of this because done a lot of damage to the snakes, you know, because it's such a mainstream story with huge historic prevalence, I believe, is why snakes get such a bad time. But I'm going to tell you some really positive stories about snakes in folklore. There is so many, so do stay tuned. So because of this association, people tend to imagine snakes as a masculine representing symbol. And even on my little god, on my altar, you know, I've got a little goddess and a god. The god's willy is indeed a snake. Because of their shape, I guess, can be seen as a phallic symbol, but that is really all I can find that suggests this. Literally just the fact that it's a long, thin reptile with no limbs to speak of. They are not very often associated with masculinity. In witchcraft, anyway, from my research, are more associated with Gaia, the goddess. They seem to be quite earthly. Rebirth and transformation and the ability to adapt and transform and grow. The survivors, they can go for a long time without any food and survive. I mean, my snakes, I feed them every 6 weeks, sometimes once every 2 months, and they survive this because that's how they're built. I even believe as a snake keeper that it's better for them to feed them less. I think it makes them live a lot longer and more naturally. They are able to conserve their energies for survival. It's amazing. They're also feisty, you know, they're also quite fiery. In Kundalini, the snake curled up at the spine represents the fire element, as Yasmin said last episode. I'm just going to quickly say, you can hear all about my personal experience doing Kundalini diary episode, a sister episode to the Kundalini episode, which is on Spotify right now. That's on my Patreon, which you can subscribe to and hear all the bonusy little bits and bobs like that. Okay, back to the episode. It's a reptile that represents getting stuff done and action. But snakes aren't fast. They're only fast when they need to be fast, when they strike for their food. They'll take the time, slithering along nicely, until there is a need to act, to strike for what is needed, what they want. And I quite like that in the interpretation of why perhaps you'd use snake symbolism in your magic and witchcraft. I'm just going to read a little bit from the book Animal Magic, which is a pagan portals book by Rachel Patterson. Quote, "Quite often, a shadow guide, the snake has so many wonderful qualities that will help guide you. It sheds its skin, which reminds us that we can shed our illusions and any self-imposed limitations or ideas, and brings us a link to astral travel. Snakes also bring fertility, creation and transformation. It can symbolise sexuality and is linked to many deities for that same reason. Snake is energy, raw power and inner spark of spirituality, but it also brings healing and wisdom. Keywords are transformation, fertility, astral travel, creativity, sexuality, power, spiritually, healing, and wisdom. However, snakes also carry the weight of negative associations throughout history. As we've said, snakes are often viewed as a symbol of deceit, temptation, and anger. But in many mythologies, snakes are tied to evil forces, harbingers of death and destruction. Their venomous bite is feared as a deadly threat, reminding us of a life's fragility and the ever-present danger lurking in the shadows that cannot be seen, silently moving, slithering. I mean, they don't really hiss, to be honest. The hissing is definitely Hollywood. My snakes just kind of breathe out loudly, and that would be considered a hiss. Another reason people might not like them is the way they move, because I guess they move like a worm, the slither, for want of a better word. Some don't like the way snakes move because they have no outside limbs. They move contouring their muscles a certain way, which gives them the look of, I don't know, a slug or a snail or a worm or something. The way the sidewinder moves on the sand goes in a weird kind of sideways shuffle, which I really love. But even that brings to mind a way of moving that isn't quite right or straightforward. It's weird moving one way but doing something else. I don't know. There is something there about a snake can't be trusted, and I'm pretty sure there is connection to how they move because of what we've brought up with as Westerners, I guess. People are surprised who don't know much about snakes when they touch my snake and it's not slimy. It's actually really dry and smooth and shiny. This surprises people because they think the way it moves equals slime, like a snail or a slug, and it is just so far from the reality of the reptile. It is just bananas to me as a snake keeper. But the snake is believed to be one of the oldest animals in the world, as a reptile related directly to the dinosaurs, been around for a long time. And so the snake is believed to represent eternity and wisdom. And when you see snakes in symbolism, the symbolism of a serpent eating its own tail is known as the Ouroboros, Ouroboros. Is that right? Ouroboros. It represents several concepts such as infinity, cyclicality. The circular nature of this symbol is the endless life cycle, death and rebirth and transformation, death and rebirth and transformation, portrayed beautifully by the humble and ancient snake. And also self-renewal. The act of the serpent eating its own tail represents the idea of something constantly recreating itself, symbolising growth, renewal, and the eternal return. And the snake regenerates itself when it sheds its skin. I absolutely love that symbolism. I always think of the book, the never-ending story, how I think there's two snakes intertwined, eating each other's tails, because it's never ending. It's like infinity story. The snake goes round and round in infinity, ever progressing but following the same pattern. So that's like our life. We're born, we live, and we die, but between those moments on this earthly plane anyway, we can make changes, adapt, transform, and shed old skins, old belief systems, old patterns in our life. Different forks in the road, but ultimately we are following the same pattern as all our ancestors before us and all our ancestors that will follow behind us. I just love that about the snakes. I love that. Oh, what else? Let's have some mythology. In Greek mythology, serpents are ancient creatures that have been around since times of ancient Greece, and snakes are commonly featured in Greek mythology, and they take two main meanings in this mythology, and they're completely opposite, like mirrors and yin and yang, usually good luck and evil. Have we heard this before? Snakes were thought to be bringers of good luck, And that's especially common when people encountered snakes in the wild, which was thought to bring them good luck if it didn't hurt them and they didn't hurt the snake. But then on the other hand, it was a symbol of evil. And I guess one of the main symbols of evil is in the Greek mythology tales was a Medusa. This was an evil creature with snakes sticking out of her head like hair, and was a scorned goddess that got turned into this scary creature. And I think when she looked at men, didn't they turn to stone, hissing and being aggressive? There's a lot more to that, actually. And I'm going to signpost you to the White Witch podcast. Oh, it's another podcast pal mention. Carly Rose does a really inspiring podcast. She's one of the OG British witch podcasters out there. One of her recent episodes is all about Medusa. I highly advise you and recommend you to go over there and listen after this, because it is such a cracking episode and it'll have so much more depth and insights into this amazing goddess and all the history and stuff, much more than this shoddy attempt from me. But I must say, like the snake, Medusa is seriously misunderstood. And after I'd listened to that episode, which I will link in this show description synopsis, it's absolutely on my bucket list to work with her, because I feel you, Medusa, I feel you. I also learnt from the White Witch that snake skins are really good as a offering to Medusa on the altar. I used to hang snake skins around my bedroom when I was young and gothic. I used to hang them from the lampshade and pin them to the wall and stuff. That would mainly to scare my mum and keep her out my bedroom. It also looked pretty goth. Anyway, what was I saying? In many Native American tribes, they had a ritual called the ritual of snakes. And they performed this ritual in order to protect their land and their hills, but also themselves when they went away travelling. They really respected snakes. Isn't there something called the snake dance, one of the tribes? Don't they go out and find all these snakes in the jungle and then don't they dance with them? Let me see. Oh, here we go. Hopi Office. Horfis. O-P-H-I-S. Office. The Hopi believe that their intimacy with rattlesnakes and other species is of great importance. For thousands of years, the Hopi tribe of northern Arizona has performed a seductive, sacred ceremony that embodies the manifold and richly evocative archetype nature of the serpent. In modern times, the so-called snake dance has gained notoriety, partly because the people who are doing the snake dance gather these snakes up from the jungle and they wash them carefully, and they put these snakes in their mouths and round their necks, and then I guess they dance around with them as they do this. The species are both venomous and non-venomous. That might include garter snakes, gopher snakes, bull snakes. I know they're really aggressive, bull snakes, because my mate used to have them. Sidewinders and even rattlesnakes. So it is proper dodgy stuff. They do this every August in the rainy season within a flute ceremony. The snake dance occurs in the village of Orabi. Oh my God, I am butchering this. This ceremony can't actually be considered serpent worship. It is instead a plea to the monsoon moisture in a stunningly beautiful but harsh desert landscape. It's a 16-day ritual and it encourages the final maturity of the crops, mainly corn, beans and squash, during the natural cycle of the crops in the monsoon season. I'm sure I read somewhere they tried not to hurt the snakes and set them free again to appease the goddess of nature, but I can't find where I read that because I've done so much research on this. In India, snakes are worshipped by the locals during the month of Sharavan. When this happens, they feed milk to the snakes and they worship them. And in Japan, they connect the snake to life-giving ability and fertility, and also connect them to rice fields, where they usually find them in nature. Kind of sounds like it's just a normal situation for them and they don't give it much thought. However, in China, snakes represent an evil quality because of their cunning nature. They are often feared animals, and the Chinese don't like to have them in their home. It's considered a bad omen if a Chinese person was to find a snake lurking in the corner trying to find some warmth. However, there is some Chinese folklore mythology that explains why the Chinese dislike snakes so much. The legend of Madam Whitesnake. This is quite a massive and in-depth story, and I've found lots of different versions of it. Some of them are quite negative and some of them are really romanticised. But the general gist is there's this huge magical snake that lives under the sea that desires to be a human, and so gets given the gift of transforming the self into a human to metamorphosis through practical magic. So she's also a witch snake, snake witch. Madam Whitesnake goes to a boat race in China, falls in love with a man who is a herbalist, and this herbalist proper loves her, absolutely dotes on her. But the local Buddhist, who I think is a friend of the herbalist, advises the herbalist that his wife, who he loves, isn't who she says she is. She's deceiving and sinister, but he won't hear of it. And eventually, I think she gets given some herbs or some poison or something, which reveals her snake, inner snake. Oh my God, it reminds me of Shallow Hal. Do you remember that film? And either the herbalist forgives her or gets really upset and dies. And she goes back to the sea with a broken heart from a human experience. But there was another version where the man was snooping in the woman's bedroom and he saw Madame Whitesnake as a partial human, partial snake. And of course he wasn't right best pleased, was he? The husband, now full of remorse, renounces the earthly world in hope of redemption. And I think there's been loads of films made about it, and it's really deep and definitely could have its own episode. But from that, it seems women are sometimes associated as snakes and can't be trusted and are devious. There is sort of that running through the snaky connection with reptiles and how they respond to them. It's definitely worth a research. I'm going to link all the pages I've read in this research in the show notes so you can dive into your own little rabbit hole. So it's all about the connection between dangers of beauty. Snake women are both cunning and lethal, taking advantage of their surpassing beauty, and their prey always dies a horrible death. Oh my God. Okay, I feel like I need to get some positivity back in here now. I don't suppose you've heard of the symbolism of snakes in medicine. This is pretty cool. You know, the famous caduceus sign. Caduceus sign. I think that's right. Which is a symbol of medicine today. It's the symbol of two snakes wrapped around a pole with wings on the top of the pole, which is an occasional symbol of medicine today in different industries and established companies, such as the World Health Organization, aka WHO. Oh? Well, this dates back to an amazing little tale back in Greek mythology, where the serpents were a symbol of health and medicine that has managed to snake through in today. They're associated with healing and the god Asclepius, whose snake was his familiar and would crawl across the bodies of sick people asleep in the temples at night and lick them back to health. How cool is that? Proper love that. Initially described as an average Joe in Homer's Iliad, Asclepius went to be defined across ancient Greece for his medical powers of healing the sick. Although as a mere physician, it took me bloody ages to say that just then, popular belief would render him a son of Apollo and a mortal princess by divine right, a god. Unfortunately, Jesus really did not like doctors, especially divine ones. Afraid that he would grant the man immortality, Jesus killed Asclepius. Oh, gutted. Okay, I hope that made sense. It was actually quite a challenge for me to read. So the rod of Asclepius is the symbol used by the World Health Organization. It directly relates to the god of medicine. The staff with serpents wrapped around is actually the only true symbol of medicine. The origin of the rod, well, it's like anything. People disagree with the origins of the stories that claim to be connected to it. The first theory referred to as the worm theory and revolves around treatment involving worms. And the other relates to the biblical story of Moses. So the first theory with the worms basically refers to Ebus Papyrus, which is a medical textbook from ancient Egypt. It covers a whole range of diseases, both mental and physical, and is believed to be written about 1500 BC. So I'm not going to read all this, but basically it was just putting worms and letting them crawl all over you when you were sick. Pretty gross. The other one, which revolves around the story from the Bible, Moses carried a bronze staff, around which a serpent was wound. The bronze serpent was believed to possess strong healing powers. The combination of the serpent and the staff were somewhat viewed as a magic wand. Ooh, such a witch. So there you go, you heard it here first. Moses liked snakes and he also carried a magic wand, so he was a witch. In the passage in the Bible, it describes that anyone sick must be bitten by the serpent. Its venom would heal anyone and any disease, making apparent its obvious relationship with healing and medicine. I don't know, I prefer the Greece tale, the ancient Greece one with the snakes chilling out in the temple, slithering around all the sick people. I think that one's the best. There is the Hindu snake goddess Manasa Devi. A snake goddess is worshipped by Hindus mainly for the prevention and cure of snake bites and infectious diseases like smallpox and chickenpox, as well as prosperity and fertility. She stands for both destruction and regeneration, almost akin to a snake shedding its skin and being reborn. The idol of the goddess is deciphered as a graceful lady with her body adorned with snakes and sitting on a lotus flower with a stake under a hooded canopy of 7 cobras. She is often seen as the one-eyed goddess and is sometimes portrayed with her son Askita on her lap. During the monsoon seasons, the goddess Manasa is worshipped mainly in the eastern Indian state of Bengal throughout the months of June, July and August, at a time when the snakes leave their nesting ground and come out into the open to become active. It's a month-long affair spanning July and August. Devotees pay absence to the goddess. People perform various pujas or rituals to appease her, and in some rituals, worshippers are seen to pierce their bodies. Poisonous snakes are displayed on the altar, and a live show is there depicting the life and legend of snaky goddesses and all that jazz. And that was from that fantastic website, Learn Religions, where I get so much good information all about paganism and all kinds of cool spirituality and religious types of stuff. And then I guess the last thing to think about is snakes in dreams. This is quite hard to research because I think dreams are just so personal because of people's associations with snakes as a living creature and a symbolism. It's really hard to pin down. I dream of snakes a lot. I dream of snakes eating each other and my snake tattoos disappearing off my feet and me being devastated about it. snakes, for me, tell me messages of resilience and change is coming. But that really is personal because snakes are just so positive to me. And I use snake skin all the time in protecting spell jars. I'm bringing up my snakes with love and trust, and it's such a big part of my life. I always use pebbles as snake skin in spell jars for protection, and when people want sigils for change or rejuvenation or success in a project, I put a little bit of snakeskin in there. But again, using animal byproduct, it really is about your relationship to that animal, if you've got an animal, or what you feel and think about that animal on a personal level. You know, like if you're scared of dogs, you're not going to be putting canine teeth in a spell about loyalty and friendship, because the dog it doesn't represent that to you, if you see what I mean. You could add canine teeth to a spell that you wanted to be aggressive in, or to add more bite onto something and bring it to you, or even as a warning, because that's your association to a dog. Whereas people with dogs who love their dogs would put canine teeth in a spell for protection and for more aggression in taking over a situation, perhaps, because their pet dog is on their side. So it's just, magic is like that. It's just so very personal. You can buy all the books till the cows come home. In the end, it's your personal relationship and understanding and intent, the animal you choose to work with, whether that's on this earth or spirit animals, spirit guides and all that. I hope that makes sense. I'll listen back to it and check. Well, that might be your lot for now. I want to end on, again, why I love snakes so much. And because I've always had snakes, they are just so powerful for me. I think I really relate to them, especially when I was young, about how misunderstood they actually are. When I was a moody teenage goth, snakes were my power animal, and I would walk around with them in the summer around my neighbourhood, and people would be scared of me as opposed to picking on me. And I think that's where the protective element comes from. I use snake skin as a shield to protect me from negativity and bad vibes. I do have this one memory that I want to leave you with. When I was very young, I used to go on holiday with a guy that abused me all the time, and I couldn't escape from him. And I remember we went to Blackpool, and there were this guy on the front, and he had the biggest, most beautiful python I'd ever seen. Not anything unusual in terms of python colours. It was just enormous. It must have been 10 or 12 foot. It was huge. And he was just walking around with it hanging off him. And this snake was just so chill. I think it was called Sid, like Sid the snake. And he'd stand outside of the pleasure beach, the theme park. I was just so interested in this snake. And I remember the guy just picking the snake up and plonking it on my head, on my neck. And it's so warm and so heavy. But my abuser was actually scared of snakes and wouldn't come near me to get me to make me leave. And I think, being honest, in this moment, I felt like that snake, Sid the snake, saved me that day. He saved me just for 20 minutes, half an hour. And I think that was the moment that cemented my love and appreciation of the beautiful reptile, the snake. Who knew just how big a deal they would become in my life, from having them in my home as beloved pets all these years, to getting tattoos of them, to using them in magic and witchcraft, and now to experience the snake of Kundalini. Yeah, I thought I'd share that as an ending, signing off for the podcast. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode and it hasn't been too mumbly. I do try really hard to give brief, helpful, fun, fast facts, and I will credit all my sources in the description, in the synopsis, so you can go ahead and research further. But thank you so much for listening to me, and if you want any information or advice about how to look after snakes, if you fancy getting a pet snake or you've been thinking about it for a while and you heard me here, this is your sign to get a pet snake. There is this amazing reptile rescue place up in Knaresborough I can totally link you up with. They have all kinds of amazing, unusual, exotic pets, all looking for a new home, and a hell of a lot of snakes and bearded dragons. I absolutely adore them, and I would be lost without them, especially my beautiful little Pebbles. She is my beautiful serpent soul sister. You have been listening to the Bell Witch podcast, created with love and magic by me, Swailes, the friendly green witch. I love to hear from you, and I absolutely love to celebrate you. If you have a podcast or a business, a witchy business, a pagan related topic you love to talk about, you can reach me on the Bell Witch podcast at yahoo.com. Send me a trailer and I will absolutely play it, because there is magic in sharing audiences amongst podcasts. Music by Jeff Harvey of Pixabay. The official Bell Witch photographer is the lovely Beverly Thornton. Thank you so much for choosing the Bell Witch podcast to fill your ears. Stay magical, witches.